Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little bit, but today's video is highly anticipated. New camper. A lot of you guys had guessed correctly on the platform that I was switching to from GFC to the Super Pacific X1, and this is a first impressions video of the Super Pacific X1 in comparison to the GFC V2 that I had on here prior. So first off, this is going to be a longer video. There is a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that you guys have the information that you need when deciding to go either Super Pacific, GFC, or any other camper platform in the industry right now. There's a lot of choices. I'm going to explain why I went with Super Pacific over some of the other ones, and let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. And let's kick this thing off. All right, so I have a lot of notes on my phone here that I'm going to be referring to. I wanted to make sure this video was in depth and that I didn't forget anything. So I'm going to be looking at my phone in regards to notes, bullet points that I've made about this whole discussion. So first off, my experience with GFC, why I switched. I think that's going to be a really common and popular question. I know it was on Instagram. Why did I switch from GFC to Super Pacific? There's actually quite a few reasons why I made the switch. So first off, the lack of venting, the window, the tent design, the material being used upstairs. After I spent nearly 80 nights in that thing in 2023 through all different types of elements, rain, snow, wind, hot summer days, etc., I was begging for more from the GFC platform. In my use scenario, the GFC couldn't provide that. So if you guys watched the previous video, would I buy a GFC again? I talked about the window layout, the window design. In certain elements, it just does not work, okay? So the Super Pacific, the windows zip all the way around. The only one that is like the GFC is the rear window, which they actually have a secure bungee system that you can tie it down so the flap doesn't come up. So venting was a huge issue. Obviously I tried to mitigate that as much as possible. Carpet headliner, running a diesel heater in the winter time or when it got colder, all helped that. But again, I was begging for more out of this platform, and unfortunately the GFC couldn't meet that. Overall comfort of spending longer lengths of time in the GFC just didn't work out too well for me, okay? I think the GFC is a solid platform for a lot of people getting into it, but once you start spending more time camping, getting out there like I did, like I said, I spent nearly 80 nights in that thing in 2023, and I felt like I pushed it to its limits and where I was asking for it, and I really couldn't get more out of it at that point. Some other things that kind of pushed me away from GFC after the year of owning it was just company values, lack of innovation in the product. They released a turbo cubby, which I don't think a lot of people were requesting. I could be wrong. They did release the turbo nap, which was an improvement in the mattress, but to be honest, there was so many requests to fix and update the tent layout, the tent material, the tent design, that they really never, I felt like personally, paid attention too much to that. Now recently, in the past month, they have made some additions to the tent design, so they've actually added an extra layer on the screen door. I'm personally not a huge fan of it. I'll go ahead and toss up a photo here. I think it kind of defeats the purpose to some degree. I think it looks a little funky too, in my opinion. Again, this is all my personal preference. You guys can say you totally disagree. I'm just letting you know how I feel about the upgrades that they've implemented so far. So a lot of that kind of just led me to getting a little frustrated with the platform itself, wanting more out of the camper. Super Pacific has been on my radar for quite a while after looking at their tent at Mountain Expo West in Denver last summer. Keder gave me a walk around, and Josh was there as well. Huge thanks to those guys for getting me into the Super Pacific platform as well. But once I saw a walk around, once I did a hands-on feel of the product, you really start to see the differences between the Super Pacific and the GFC. They really start to become more apparent. And obviously you guys can see these online. You can see it, you know, through pictures and stuff, but in person, in my experience, was really what set the two campers apart. And even when I walked around at Expo West last year, I looked at other campers as well, and I think that is a really good thing to do, especially before investing into one of these campers. Anything in the industry, reach out, see if you have local people in your area that you can do a walk around, kind of get familiar with these products, and make your final decision from there. Now, there's other personal reasons why I switched to the Super Pacific from the GFC. I don't think it's really correct to possibly discuss some of those on this video. I'm not here to bash GFC. I'm not here to create drama between, which camper company is better. I'm just here to inform you guys after my experience of now owning the GFC for well over a year, switching to the Super Pacific. I think hearing this information from someone that has been so invested into camping, using the product, potentially finding flaws with the product, I think it's important to express those and let you guys know, especially when you're out there looking at investing in one of these, whether it's the Super Pacific, another camper company. It's a big investment, and I think you should be really confident in your choice and your selection. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the things that I first want to cover. So let's start with ordering one of these campers. So current lead times at the time of making this video, Super Pacific is 10 to 12 weeks on average. If you're looking at a Tacoma platform, they actually usually even have some in stock. So you could potentially get into a Super Pacific X1 for the Tacoma platform in usually less than 30 days if they have one in stock. That was the case with mine. Placed my order and I was actually on the truck in about 30 days, okay? At the time of filming this, GFC install lead time at the HQ in Belgrade, Montana is the end of October, beginning of November 2024. Big difference there, okay? The shortest lead time that I found was September 12th, and that was actually an install in California. So regardless, if you place an order now, you're basically not going to be using that camper for this upcoming summer and all the camping adventures that maybe you want to plan or do have planned. You're going to be missing that unless you go the used route, which can be difficult to find a camper, especially in your area, or you're going to be driving quite the distance to even pick it up. All right, so let's move into price points. And this is obviously a discussion that gets brought up quite a bit. There is a price difference between going the Super Pacific X1 and a GFC V2. Recently, on January 1st of this year, 2024, GFC raised all their prices by $750. There's also an install fee that is tacked onto that as well. So depending on if you come out to the HQ in Belgrade, if you have it shipped to a satellite or remote location, there's often going to be tax added, and then also to a install and delivery fee on top of that, okay? At the time of filming this, a basically bone stock, which when I mean bone stock Super Pacific X1, basically comes with all of the options that you would on a maxed out GFC, minus a couple things here and there. But Super Pacific with the options is $13,495. That includes free install at their Portland location, which I would highly recommend going, seeing the facility, doing a walk around of the process of install, assembly, and all that was super cool to see. There's also no tax in Oregon. So, if you're driving from California up to Oregon, it's probably worth it to skip having it shipped somewhere in California or even Denver, where there's going to be tax that is taxed on to that purchase. GFC V2 with my previous options, with the price increase, came out to $9,150 at the headquarters. That would also require another $175 for your install fee as well. And then adding in an additional $250 to $500 on top of that if you are going with any cab side or rear back window on the actual canopy, okay? So I was kind of curious because it seems like a lot of people are purchasing from out of state, potentially maybe getting these delivered or shipped, and with those options that I had selected, if purchased in California, for example, including tax and install, you're actually closer to about $10,500, all right? So the other thing that I want to talk about in terms of price, and this is going to be in regards to mounting anything, mounting, an awning to the camper, for example, mounting exterior accessories, etc., whatever it is, you have to buy GFC hardware. And I don't think this is something that a lot of people know about prior to getting into the camper. I know I wasn't aware of it, but GFC uses their own special type of T-track that you can only use their hardware to mount anything to, okay? To me, that really sucks, okay? It's kind of like the Apple ecosystem. Like once you buy into it, you can only use Apple stuff. Once I found out that about GFC, that you have to use their hardware to mount anything, it adds up really fast. So for example, a 4-pack of their track or T-nuts comes out to about $20 for 4. So basically $5 for 1 track nut. I just actually purchased universal track nuts for the Super Pacific so I can kind of mount some lights up on the outside. I got 100 of them for $9, okay? That will also work on the inside track upstairs, so if I want to attach anything else up there, it's going to work. So that's another thing to really think about once you start getting into the GFC. While the upfront cost may be a lot cheaper than a lot of other camper platforms in the industry right now, you really have to start to take into consideration all of these additional add-ons that you're going to be spending in terms of track nuts, other upgrades that you're going to need to make the camper feel a little bit more comfortable. I know for myself, I probably spent well over $100, probably about $150 just in track nuts, which is absurd. I don't think anyone should be spending that much to mount a Baja light on the side, okay? So just something to think about. Again, you can't use any universal type of hardware when mounting stuff to the exterior side of the GFC. So that cost is going to be something else that you have to consider. Now, the other common thing that is often discussed is the weight of these campers in comparison to, for example, the GFC V2. You have like an Alu cab, the Vagabond, which is now out of business. But yes, the Super Pacific does weigh more than the GFC. But at the end of the day, it's really not that much more for the added benefits that you get out of this camper, okay? So from Super Pacific website, the X1 for the Tacoma weighs roughly about 340 pounds in comparison to about 280 for the GFC V2, okay? So yes, it does weigh more, but also it's not a substantial amount. It's not 150, 200 plus pounds more, unlike going something with like an Alu cab, a 4-wheel camper that I've seen people put on to the Tacomas. For me, the weight increase was not a huge downfall once you start thinking about it more. I'm already pretty light in the rear. I don't really store a lot of stuff. I don't have deck drawers. I don't have custom drawer system in the back, so I'm already light, okay? So adding an additional roughly 60 to 70 pounds from the camper was not a huge deal breaker for me. I don't think anymore that should be a deal breaker for people. 60 to 70 pounds at the end of the day isn't that much, but once you start going 150, 200 pounds more from camper to camper, then yes, it does start to become more of a sit down, think about potential upgrades that you have to do to your leaf pack in the rear, springs, etc., whatever it is. But for me personally, not a huge downfall for all of the extra added benefits that I get out of the X1 versus the V2. All right, let's talk doors and side entry. So this is another huge difference between the GFC and the Super Pacific X1. So in the GFC, we had these support bars that would attach right here, and then there was another one that would come back here, okay? You really don't notice it until you start loading stuff into the camper from the side. There was a lot of things where I actually couldn't fit them through the side here just because they were too large. So if it's a bin, it's a tote, sometimes I'd actually have to go through the side, or the back, I mean. So that's something else to think about. I'm super stoked to have full side entry once again. The other thing I never really got with the GFC as well is, even though there was those cross support beams here, people would put bags on these corners, which only further limits your ability to actually reach in and grab stuff. Okay, so now you're only working with this small triangle here because you have further blocked off your access points on this side door. So full access, no support bar, which is awesome. I've already grown to love that a lot more now, just by stuffing stuff in here and reaching in, grabbing whatever it may be. The other awesome thing with their doors is they have these attachment points. So you can see I already have one of their bags up here. There is enough room to put Molly panel stuff. I've also seen people put Max Tracks in here, which is pretty sick. And their doors are stout. So just listen to this. Yeah, so it's super solid. One latch, one handle, opens up, and you're all set. Unlike the GFC, where you had one lock on each side of the door. Yeah, super slick. The other thing to note is you can actually adjust the height. So if you have an awning on here, you can actually adjust it so the door only opens maybe to here versus all the way up here, and you can actually even raise this further so the door can actually open up even more. Okay, so if you want the door to stop here, all you have to do is unbolt this, adjust that, screw it back in, and you're set, which is another really just super cool feature of the X1 doors. If we get a closer look here, you'll see that there is this lip, and this lip goes all the way around the door, okay? Not on the bottom, but it's all the way on the top, the sides, which is fantastic. So if water is dripping down, it just is going to hit this, run off the side, and straight down the side of the truck, so you don't have to worry about it dripping into the camper. This also really helps with creating a better seal for water penetration on the sides. You're not gonna have to worry about water getting in from the front, the top, whatever it is. And their bulb seal that they use on these doors is fantastic. It's super thick, and it covers the whole perimeter of the door, so you don't have to worry about any water intrusion getting in there. The last thing that I really want to cover with these doors, and this is with Super Pacific's newer style locks, is that you can actually lock and unlock all three doors from the inside, which is really, really rad and cool. So let's say I close the door, I'm getting ready to go into bed, the door is shut, you know, maybe let's say I forgot to lock it on the outside with the key. Doesn't matter, because I can actually just flip this switch in here and it will lock that door from the inside. And again, you can do that on all three sides from inside the camper. You don't have to lock the lock prior to closing the door and getting inside the camper, which is super slick and super sweet. All right, so let's talk sleeping in the sleeping area, those comparisons versus the Super Pacific X1 and then the GFC V2. So something that I actually learned after getting a quick tour of the assembly area for the Super Pacific is that they use the same sleeping area size, whether it's a full size or a mid-size platform. All right, so the only thing that's changing is the angle of the canopy to accommodate that bed size on the truck, and then also the sleeping area where you will be passing through, which I thought was actually pretty smart. In my opinion, it probably decreases potential errors in manufacturing processes, and then also, most likely, in my opinion, would probably speed up the overall efficiency at which these campers are produced. Because when you think about it, you only have to worry about one sleeping platform the same size for all of these different campers. It's not going to change at all. The only thing that's changing is the canopy itself on which the tent sits on, which is pretty freaking rad and a really smart production note in my opinion. So sleeping area, the X1 is basically built around the XPED dual mat, or mega mat I should say, which is 52 inches wide and 100 inches long in total area. The XPED mat itself is 52 inches wide and 80 inches in length. Okay, so you do have quite a bit of sleeping area up there, and then you have that 20 inches of pass-through space. Okay, so you don't have to move a floor panel like you do in the GFC to access downstairs. You don't have to wake up the person that is sleeping next to you if someone else is up there. You can just simply remove one of their MOLLE panels on the Super Pacific X1 there, and then you can get downstairs, which is super cool. The GFC for the midsize is 50 inches wide, so it's roughly 2 inches less in overall width, and then 90 inches in length, and that covers the full length. Okay, so you don't have any pass-through space with the GFC. It's just a full 90 inches. In terms of the mattress, so the GFC is now using the Turbo Nap, which if you are a prior GFC customer, it is going to cost you a whopping $750 to upgrade to that new mattress. If you don't want to upgrade to that, then you're kind of limited in your options right now in terms of increasing the overall comfort of the sleeping platform up there. Like I mentioned, the X1 is using the XPED Air inflatable mattress, which is roughly 4 inches. I used something similar in my CVT mount hood prior to getting the GFC, and it is a phenomenal way to sleep. I honestly thought it was more comfortable than sleeping on my bed at home. The ability to adjust how much air is in there, you can deflate it if you want to, more or less. It's really, to me, in my opinion, is an excellent way to sleep and have that adjustability versus being stuck with foam and only having one option in terms of softness, firmness, whatever it is. Okay. Now, when we compare the R value, which is basically the retention of heat, especially in colder climates, of course, foam is going to have a higher R value. For example, the Turbo Nap from GFC has an R value of 18. The XPED has a value of 9, so it's about half. But again, for me, it's not a huge downfall because once it gets colder, I'm running a heater already in the camper. Really anything below 30, 35 degrees, I'm running a heater regardless, okay? And that's just for comfort. So R value for me, it's not really a big thing to worry about, okay? Now, I know some people worry about air, the ability to puncture it, it leaking, etc., stuff like that. Absolutely could be a concern, but for me personally, I used that off-brand XPED for over a year. I never had issues, never worried about puncturing a hole in it. But again, if you have dogs up there, sharp objects, knife, and you puncture it, yes, it's going to leak air, and then you're gonna have to work on repairing that. The last thing too is the ability to deflate the XPED mattress, which is huge, okay? That allows you to store bedding and pillows up there, whereas in the GFC, especially with the new mattress now being 3 inches thick, you're not going to be able to store that. I know GFC claims that you can still store stuff in there. No, I just wouldn't, okay? I had issues storing stuff in there even when it was just the 2 inches of foam. Once you start stuffing more stuff in there, it's just going to start to bow those side rails. You're gonna have issues closing it, stuffing in the tent material. So another thing to note, yes, you can store some amount of bedding in the Super Pacific. The GFC, I would not plan on doing so. All right, let's talk probably about the hottest topic that I discussed in the video of would I buy a GFC again, and that was the tent material, okay? So first off, this is a massive upgrade in comparison to the material that GFC uses, all right? Super Pacific uses a marine grade material that is not only a lot thicker, but it definitely feels a lot more durable in terms of weather resistant, potentially a higher insulating factor as well, in my opinion. And again, the ability to fully zip these side doors, all right? So there is a zipper that goes all the way around on these side doors. So you can completely close off that, unlike the GFC, where this bottom was open. The other thing that the Super Pacific has is no CM mesh, which is a much tighter mesh on the inside. The GFC mesh, even though they changed it recently, it is still pretty large in terms of opening on the mesh. The no CM mesh is as it sounds, no see-through, so which is super awesome for privacy when you have potentially the doors open, but you have the screen door exposed. It is no see-through, which is fantastic. The other thing too, it never happened to me, but I also heard complaints from people that were down south or I think even in Alaska, is that with the GFC screen doors, since the openings were large enough, they actually had bugs that were able to pass through there and actually enter the camper through those. Even though they're small holes in the screen, they still were able to pass through and get inside. So by far, probably one of the best upgrades to the tent is those vents. And Super Pacific calls those the flow state adjustable vents. And those things are freaking sweet, okay? They're on all three windows. So you have one on this side, the rear window, and then the other side. And essentially what that allows is in rooftop tents, when you're sleeping in there, especially in colder climates or when there's a lot of moisture, temperature differences from inside to outside is going to create condensation. So with those vents, it allows hot air to escape, especially when you're sleeping at night. A lot of times that hot air is obviously going to rise, and when it does rise, those vents allow that hot air to escape versus being trapped inside the camper, which can lead to condensation, all right? Why GFC never had those? I have no clue. They had their triangle quote-unquote vent windows over here, but from my understanding, hot air rises. Hot air does not go down towards your feet, and what that eventually causes is the hot air to be trapped up in that top corner of the tent, which leads to condensation. Okay, so without a diesel heater, especially in the wintertime, you're going to have issues with condensation in the GFC. Again, I have no clue why GFC never added the vents. I know they're probably working on it. I've seen sketches of vents on their tents, but to be honest, the camper company is almost 5 years old at this point, probably older. I could be wrong there. Still no vents. It's just, I mean, if you look at almost all of the other rooftop tents in the industry, there is some type of cone vent at the top to allow hot air to escape. It's a no-brainer, in my opinion, to have something up there to allow that air to escape and potentially help mitigate some aspect of condensation. Obviously, it's not going to completely get rid of it, but it's going to help, and it's also going to help improve and elevate the camper experience that you're getting, okay? So that was a huge point for me in getting the Super Pacific. They're in the Pacific Northwest. They know water, they know condensation, they know high moisture area. They adapted, they improved, and they included a vent to allow hot air and to help mitigate condensation inside the tent. Now, in terms of the tent attachment, it uses a very similar style. It uses the Keder rail, which is basically the same concept as GFC. When I took a really close look though at how they attached it, it definitely seems a lot more secure than the GFC, especially around the corners. So the GFC has very sharp 90-degree angles in their Keder rail. The Super Pacific is actually curved. So in my personal opinion and just looking at it, it seems a lot tighter, seems a lot more well protected from the overall elements. You're not going to have any gaps in those corners, for example. There is no light, there is nothing coming in the corners of the Super Pacific, unlike some GFC owners that have had issues with tearing in the corners. I personally never experienced that, but that Keder rail on the GFC, I think, experienced a lot of stress in those corners. I know they have made adjustments to the tent to maybe make it larger, potentially have less stress in those corners. But that is something that I noted right away, is the Keder rail system on the Super Pacific does seem to be better. It seems to be more well thought out in terms of the overall design. And it's just solid in those corners, so you don't have to worry about it popping out. You don't have to worry about light coming through, rain, snow, whatever it is, and all of that stuff. Now, the other really awesome thing about the Super Pacific X1 is their quote-unquote electrical raceways. And that is this system right here. You can see it on this frame support right there as well. And man, that makes it a dream for running wires, okay? It is so easy to run and route wires in the Super Pacific, make it look super clean, hide them, etc., stuff like that. In comparison to the GFC is super hard to run wires, make it look tidy. Can it be done? Absolutely. But this electrical chaseway, you can see I have the aux beam switch panel hooked up right now. It's just super sweet. Like, there is so much function that you can do. They have plate covers here. I have a lot of mine out just because I was running wires, but they have plates that you can modify for USB plugins, cigarette ports on all 4 corners, okay? So there's 3 plates on each corner, which is this awesome. This aux beam fits perfect in here, which is super sweet. And that is just another added benefit of the Super Pacific and just routing wires, whatever it may be, into these electrical chaseways. You don't have to worry about them getting in the way, and you can hide them. I don't want to say it makes you lazy running wires, but man, oh man, does it make life easier routing and hiding and running wires in the Super Pacific. Now, the other super cool thing about this, not only the electrical raceway is here, so you can run the wires on the bottom, up top here, but also there are rib nut attachment points all around the camper, which I also connected one of their MOLLE panels in the rear to hold my electrical system in the back. But these are super sick. Like, you can attach so many different things to here. You could attach, you know, the quick fist for axes, shovels, whatever it may be. You can come up with your own mounting system too if you wanted to, and just there's so much flexibility with not only the electrical raceway, chaseway, but also these rib nuts that are in here as well for storage points. And so, like I mentioned, this is one of their MOLLE panels. I have the aux beam 8-gang switch panel system connected there. I've got my bus bar that is connected as well, and all of my wires for my lights are ran in this electrical chaseway, and then it's actually coming in or coming out from the top here. Super sick here. I also have another one of their MOLLE panels that I'm going to attach on the side here, and that will serve as an attachment point for my Dometic water jug, Dometic water faucet, and then the jet boil as well. There's just so much that you can do inside the camper here. There's so much function. Everything has just been thought out to an extent that in terms of function, form, use, it's amazing. It's like, I don't even know where to begin building this out because there's so many different possibilities that I can do. And it's going to be a pretty fun time just kind of getting used to this whole layout, the whole system, and building it out with everything that I need for my build. But I've seen some pretty rad builds with the Super Pacifics, and it's amazing what people can do with these attachment points, the electrical chaseway, raceway, and whatnot. So just some other things on the exterior that I want to make note of is how it covers the back. This is much improved over the GFC because basically this door is coming over further, so you don't have to worry about the gap as much, especially on the Tacoma. If we walk around the front, so one of the things obviously with the 10 inches of extra space is you're going to have more overhang. I kept the same rack that I had on or from the GFC. I just modified it. I had to cut out this small bit here because I was getting some touching on the rack. Super simple to just use the angle grinder and cut that out. But the overhang, again, is slightly more than the GFC, which I'm okay with. I'm fine now that I have extra space inside with that pass through. So right there, as you can see, sleeping is set up, and then we just have that pass through right there with the MOLLE panels. So if we do go inside, so as you can see, we do have X-Pad that is up here full sleeping area, so you could have this set up. And then we have these MOLLE panels that can move. The cool thing about these, too, let's see if I can do this with one hand. You can actually take these, store them just like that. And then this bed, head over, and now you have full interior space. This is a 5-foot bed Tacoma, so full bed access, no issues there. Again, kind of see how those MOLLE panels work, which is super slick. And then just slide this back. So this pass-through space, I'm extremely excited for. I think it's just awesome. It's super slick. You can set up the bed. You can run a diesel heater down here if you wanted to. That hot air is going to rise, and yeah, I'm just super stoked. Here's the windows. So as you can see, we have full zip. So zipping on the bottom, goes all the way around. Boom. These are those vents that allow airflow, and then this is just Velcro up here, so you can open that up. It's closed right now, but that is where that air can come in. The other thing is the bungee cords with the bar going across. So when you are closing the tent, that actually helps pull in the tent material, so you don't have to fight and go around the tent trying to stuff in the tent material in those front corners. That will pull it in. It makes closing the tent so much easier overall. These are really nice too. So unlike the GFC where you have to use carabiners, I would forget or lose my carabiners all the time. These are built in, and then you just have to roll it up the door and attach it right to here. So yeah, that is the interior of the X1. Again, pass-through space, 20 inches. MOLLE panels can act as storage there. Really cool, because you can also store stuff on those MOLLE panels, so you can access it from down below. And something that I've also seen some folks do is actually put little table legs on here, and when you take these off at camp, you can use it as a small side table for whatever you want, which is super cool. Multi-purpose, multi-use there. So that is my first impressions of the Super Pacific X1 in comparison to the GFC V2. There are so many things that set these two campers apart. And in my opinion, when you start pricing out a GFC now, when you start pricing out the additional add-ons, the proprietary hardware that you have to use with their camper, really the price isn't that far apart anymore, okay? Now obviously, yes, it is a more expensive platform, but also in my opinion, you're getting so many things upgraded in this camper that not only make it more comfortable, but also increase the overall function of itself, okay? If you're just looking to get out and camp, very basic with, moving from maybe a ground tent to a rooftop tent, and you are not planning on doing any upgrades, okay? You're not making any additions. You're not going to be spending, long trips in the camper. Probably the GFC will work for you, okay? I just found out there was a lot of things with the GFC that did not work, and even with the DIY stuff that I did to it, it still had its limitations in overall performance, and then also what I was asking out of it in terms of a camper. Super Pacific, on the other hand, obviously it's checking a lot more of those boxes for me right off the bat. I plan on doing another review at maybe 6 months or a year of ownership, and I'm planning on spending quite a bit of time in this camper this year, putting it through its paces. And Super Pacific is a super rad company. They want people that are using their product a lot, giving feedback, putting it through the ringer in different types of environments. And Josh and Peter over there were super fantastic, super helpful. The whole experience actually on getting the camper put on was night and day difference over GFC, okay? They actually paid attention to sealing the bed. They had asked if I sealed underneath my bed rails on the Tacoma, which is a common leaking point for these campers, okay? Not the camper specifically, but the actual truck bed itself. So they asked if I siliconed and sealed underneath the bed rails. They sealed the front corners of the camper a much different way than GFC did. They actually used RV putty in the corners. It looks super good, super clean. It's gonna block the water from coming in underneath the bed rails. Again, the whole experience just visiting Super Pacific, getting it installed was much different than my experience at GFC, and it's not a bad thing. It's just noticeable, especially after being on the platform now for such a long time. Going through, using the product, there's vast differences now between these two camper companies, and I think that's something you guys have to consider when going out and looking at purchasing either Super Pacific, GFC, another camper in the industry. There's so many differences now, and I think getting in touch with people that actually have these units, potentially setting up a time to see it in person, doing a demo. There's a lot of satellite shops now for Super Pacific where you can do a demo. For example, Mountain Yoda's down in Denver. They're huge people on Super Pacific. There's Crave Automotive now up in Canada as well, which is an international spot, which is super rad. Super Pacific has just really thought everything through in terms of design, function, use, and it really shows in the product, especially now that I have it in my hands. I've kind of messed around with it a little bit more, and honestly, it has me beyond stoked to get out and use their product. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. Again, these are just first impressions. I need to spend time with this camper to really give you a full opinion on the experience in different elements, how it performs in rain, snow, wind, whatever it is. I'll just tell you though, I've talked to a lot of people. The community at Super Pacific is super rad, super cool. Everyone so far has been super helpful in terms of providing feedback on how to mount stuff, how to run stuff. There's just so many things about this camper that I still have to discover. And once I get out there, start spending more time in it, camping, putting it through spaces, I'm gonna come back and give you guys a 6-month review on the differences that I have felt at 6 months with the GFC V2, and then at 6 months with the Super Pacific X1. Now in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, comments that you have about the Super Pacific, let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer those. If you guys want to see another video comparing something on the Super Pacific versus the GFC V2, let me know, okay? Like I said, I feel like a lot of people haven't made this type of video, especially someone that has spent so much time in the GFC and then moving to the Super Pacific. I have a good amount of knowledge, I have a good amount of experience, and most likely if you guys have a question on either of the products, I'm going to have an answer on both of them, okay? With that being said, thanks for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and catch you guys in the next video.